Hi, welcome to Haven. This is a podcast that's a safe space for curiosity and conversation. I'm your host, Haven, and today I'm curious. Will counseling save my marriage? Will counseling save my marriage? I don't know if it's the same stigma that it was of years past, where before if someone heard that you were going to marriage counseling, it's like, ooh, they really must be in trouble, or they're on a last ditch to save their relationship, or things are totally on the rocks. Now I think people are more open to going to it, to just learning about overall health for their relationship. And so my journey with it was, I have to backtrack all the way before I was even thinking about getting engaged. It was an interesting time in my life where me thinking about marriage to my long-term boyfriend, we had been together for almost 5 years, and I really was settled of, I think I want to marry him. That's the route I want to go. It was at the exact time in my life where my parents were getting divorced. So it was really strange of, okay, I want to build this new home together, but meanwhile, my childhood home is crumbling, and that's really concerning to me. Is that change my opinion about going into my own marriage? So my mom, her recommendation to me was, before you get even engaged, do a year of individual therapy, and Aaron can too, to really understand, who are you? What are you bringing into this marriage? And then also, who am I about to marry? And what are they bringing into the marriage? And Aaron and I did that separately. And that year separately was actually the hardest year of our entire relationship. A lot of stuff came up in myself I wasn't aware of. A lot of stuff came up in Aaron. And it was really tricky to navigate. Okay, am I still going to choose you? Is this still something I want to go through together? And then ultimately, spoiler, you guys know I did marry him. And those issues that came up in that first year didn't go away. I did commit to, we can work on these. I choose you and you choose me. But there was a lot of work, and we needed a lot of assistance through the counselor who did the individual therapy for us to do it together. So I wanted to bring onto this episode not only the person I went to therapy with, my husband Aaron, but our actual marriage counselor that we've seen for the last 13 plus years. Because again, we saw it before we even got married, Dr. Jonathan Cude. So I'm glad that you both are here today. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on your program.
Yeah, I'm excited. So Aaron, he knows this. He's been a guest multiple times, but it's very new for you. Mm-hmm. So the idea of counseling, obviously we can share what our experience was with you as our marriage counselor and what you kind of taught us and the questions you asked and what that looks like. But before we even get into that, why don't you tell us about yourself and what made you choose this as your profession?
Oh, okay. Great question. Yeah. Again, thanks for having me on your podcast. I've really enjoyed the couples work that we did from the beginning with you guys. And I think my own interest in counseling really began when I was a teenager, when I was struggling just with identity and just the identity confusion that all kids go through. And so I thought, well, how could I start really thinking about maybe helping other people? And so I actually started doing youth work in a church setting, just as my desire to help kids. And then as I got into school, majored in psychology at Baylor, then got my master's from Southwestern in marriage and family counseling. I was really going toward that direction. And then ultimately a PhD in marriage and family counseling. And all through that time, I was shifting into more of a identity as a counselor, and I didn't really get into the marriage part of it until right before I got married. And I knew that Ann and we've been married 40 years now, I knew we were going to just need a lot of preparation. So we went through premarital counseling, and it was very beneficial. And I thought, wow, even my own premarital counseling experience, I think there's a lot more to this than just what we were experiencing before we got married, just in preparation. And so as my practice grew, I did a lot of individuals. I used to see adolescents until I had my own kids, and then I figured out I didn't know anything about that. So I really switched more toward just doing a lot of couples work, which I really enjoyed. And so it was the interest and need out of my own life, I think, that really propelled me into that. And I've always been interested in talking about faith issues with couples, and because that's had been such an important part of my own relationship with Ann through the years. So a lot of my interest came through personal need, but also wanting to reach out and help others as well.
So Aaron and I, we came to you even before we got engaged, but how many couples are coming to you when they're already in the thick of a problem? Is that when they initiate? I saw something even statistically where it says that couples go around 7 years after when they should have sought outside help,
Yeah.
like when the problem is
Right.
way bigger and hairier.
Yeah, the best premarital counseling is done months and a few years after you get married, because you know the difficulty or the challenges of it. No, I encourage couples to get involved in the counseling process as much as an educational process. And there are a lot of premarital retreats, even in Texas where I practice. The state actually has come up with a law that will give couples a chance to get a free marriage license if they present that they've presented to a counselor and gone through premarital counseling for at least 6 sessions. And there are a lot of organizations that create that program so that couples can walk up to the courthouse and say, hey, we've had some premarital counseling, so get a free license to be married. But I think that preparation idea is really, really important, to see it not as a pathological or we've got to go because we have lots of problems, but we go because we want to be trained, much like a golfer would go for lessons, even though they may be a really good golfer. They just want to improve their relationship with their golf swing. They want to improve their relationship with their partner in the whole marriage or premarital type of situation. So yeah, to your point, the stigma is really gone, I think, for the most part. I think it's good actually to see that mental health issues are in the news. The pandemic, boy, sure did a lot for us to bring mental health issues to the forefront. So I think people are much more open now than ever before.
It's cool that people in the state are seeing the value of premarital counseling.
Yeah, we call that Together in Texas. It's just a format by where couples can come and get counseling from an organization or from a private therapist, and then take that certificate in and get you a free marriage license. It is cool, because I think I know other states are doing that as well, just to get over that stigma and to really promote premarital education work, because that's really what it is. It's just educating couples on what they need to be looking at, conflict issues, communication, expectations, you name it, and we cover those.
That sounds like something Texas would do.
Yes.
Don't you think?
What would you recommend to a young couple they've decided to get married, but they're just coming together and taking their first steps in premarital counseling, or maybe their first time in counseling in general?
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea first just to get them exposed. There are tons of resources. I give them a resource of Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts, for instance, the Parrot and Parrot book, which is a great workbook they could go through between sessions or even on their own. It's just something that's really needed, and because in any endeavor, we want to be prepared, and the more we can prepare couples, I think the better chance they have to just do a better job of putting in into their relationship, those qualities that will help them, and also taking out those qualities that we know will predict the end or a lot of trouble in relationships.
I think that's the ideal scenario, is that someone comes either premarital or early in the marriage before like bad habits are set in.
Oh, right.
Or even before resentment's there.
Yeah.
But what about the couples who are maybe listening and they're like, would have been nice, but definitely didn't do it.
Window, right.
Yeah,
right.
And they're wondering, will counseling even save my marriage? Is that possible? What do you say to those type of couples when they come into your office?
Well, I always try to give hope. Again, I'm pretty straightforward with couples. Basically tell them we know what makes good marriages work, having a dream together, just focusing on the friendship, the fondness and admiration. Those are qualities that will predict that a couple will have a good relationship. Good conflict education in terms of distinguishing between perpetual issues that you don't solve. They're more personality based that you have to learn to manage. And then those few percentage points of conflict that we do have with our spouse that's actually solvable, giving skills for that. And then taking out those qualities that really will predict that you will not make it. And so the criticism, the defensiveness, that criticism defensiveness cycle I talk to every couple about, we evaluate that and help them to realize that, evaluate how respectful do they talk to each other. One of Gottman's 4 qualities that will predict divorce at a very high percentage of 80%. And then that, in fact, that contempt or that disrespect is the most dangerous poison. So we try to really encourage couples to take that out and learn to deal with their own flooding process of anger and of conflict so that they can begin to at least have rational conversations and talk about expectations and talk about what they need and want. And then the sad thing is that some couples do, to your point, are way down the road and they've got those 3 qualities and they've begun to turn away from each other. And it's really discouraging for me to even see. I'll tell couples, hey, it's really sad to see that you're to the point that you have all the predictors of divorce. And so your chances of making this marriage work are very slim. But I always say I love to work with the 20%ers, those that come in and they have all the qualities of a divorce, to turn that around, to put them in the 20%, if at all possible, to help them to have a marriage that will last. And so with the skills building and just getting them to really set a commitment to attend a few sessions and do some reading and really do some homework, then yeah, every marriage can leave my office with some sense of hope. And obviously no guarantees on that, but there are points that they can really put in their relationship that will give them the best chance to say, yeah, we're going to make it.
When you were talking about the criticism and defensiveness, I was like, man, that took us years and years of you repeating yourself before we could even understand.
There would be a question that we would have, or we'd be describing a situation in the session, and Dr. Cude would say, and the cure for defensiveness is, and we'd be like,
we would forget every time. We wouldn't get it. And now we know it, and it's?
To see the truth, to find the truth. Am I going to get it right?
Yeah, you got it.
To find the truth in what the other person is saying.
Way to go.
So like if you're saying, oh, you're always late, which would be like a criticism. I'm not always late, thankfully. No, but the example, I guess, would be like if you would say, you're always late, Aaron. I would hear, oh, she wants me to be on time. That's the cure for me getting defensive. No, I'm not always late. I was on time yesterday or whatever. That would be me getting defensive, but seeing the truth in what you're trying to say, what you're asking, what you're wanting is you would want me to be on time if you were giving me that.
Yeah, taking responsibility for that. I always say there's a legitimate question, if you can find it, a legitimate question in the criticism. And that's hard when you're getting criticized, not to just go into the defensive mode, but to say, okay, what are they really needing? What are they needing me to do differently? And that's the find what's right, take responsibility, find the truth in what they're saying about me, and just say, yeah, sometimes I can be late. I know it's important to you for me to be on time, so I'm going to work on that. And actually, I don't know if marriage can get much better than that. I always encourage couples, or ask couples, how long are you going to give him to work on that? And the right answer is what?
1 week.
1 week, right. For the rest of my life.
Yeah,
and then how long are you
the
going to
sad
work
one.
on that? The right answer to that question is
right now.
right. Yeah, you're going to work on it now, but we're going to keep working on it, which gets to one of the biggest issues in marriages is dealing with these perpetual issues that we just cycle through that just seem to keep repeating themselves. And while it's frustrating to see that, you mean we're not going to solve everything? Yep, that's right. But we can keep working on it, and we can manage those conflicts in marriage where we're not hurting each other, where we're actually are getting better as the years go by, dealing with whatever baggage, whatever we bring to the marriage. I love what Gottman says, when we get married, we marry a set of problems. I say, yep, 40 years ago, I married a set of problems, which has been a significant problem in my marriage. But probably the bigger problem is that 40 years ago, my wife married a set of problems. And so we figure out over the first 10, 15 years what those are and learn to manage them in such a way where we continue to be kind and respectful, even in the midst of those differences that get heated up through our conflict.
I like to think of myself as a problem solver, but it does not work in this situation because I cannot solve you. It's almost the concept of perpetual issues is so revolutionary for me in dealing with you, Haven. Not that you have so many perpetual issues. I was
say, you're really painting a picture here.
Together, as we have worked through things, it's like, oh, this is maybe just where we have friction, and we're just going to have to learn how to deal with this. And I love you in the middle of it, and you love me in the middle of all my problems that would be probably perpetual things that would constantly annoy you, or if you weren't aware of them, you've made a conscious effort to be intentional in dealing with me and my quirks and whatever it might be, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you know what? You're talking about the fixer mentality. I think most guys, some women are fixers, but my standard little saying about that is the more we try to fix our partner, the more they actually feel like they need to be fixed, because it's a message of, oh, what's wrong with you, which is a criticism actually. When we try to help them too much, the more helpless they become and dependent. So we need to watch that fix-it mentality. I love that on YouTube. It's not about the nail. It's a very popular one. You can,
that one was huge.
Just Google that one. It's really funny, but it brings home a point that our connection is not about solution or fixing the other person. It's about really having empathy and really understanding and having a sense of connection with them.
Going back to even the perpetual issues, I remember when you asked us that years ago, you said, how many would you estimate are these perpetual issues? Like, what percentage do you think come up that really may not be solvable? And I was like, I don't know, like 10, 20%. Most things are, something you can really resolve. And you said, nope. What was it, like 61% or something? 69%?
69% of all of our conflicts are based in these perpetual issues. Personality differences, one's more social than the other, one is more interested in connection with their partner, one's more interested in the parenting process, whatever it may be. And we do solve only about 31%, which at first may be really discouraging, but it's also very relieving that not only can we not solve them, we don't have to solve them, but we do have to reconnect with our partners in that after that conflict process, knowing that, okay, we didn't fix anything, but we're a couple again. We feel like we're together.
Yeah, 69% feels like a really sexy number for a really deep problem of we're not going to solve things.
It feels like liberating in some way, but not in the it's not my problem, because it clearly is our problem. But it feels liberating in a way that, okay, I don't have to figure all of this out. I just have to learn how to live with this imperfect human.
Yeah. And my question to you, because you've been our counselor for this long, what would you say is one of our perpetual issues that we continually come to you for? Now a quick pause to hear from my sponsors. Do you ever have those people that you're just somehow always in sync with? I'll go see my mom and she's holding a water bottle in the exact same design and color that I just purchased for myself that week. Or she'll send me a picture of a new treat she picked up at the store to try, and I'm literally eating that exact same thing in that moment. The other day I went over to her place and she was wearing some super comfy pajamas, and I said, "Are those Cozy Earth?" And she said, "Yes, how did you know? I just got them. I have a set in my shopping cart I was planning to get you because I love them so much." Little did she know that I had just gotten my own first pair. The bamboo PJs that are soft, breathable, and great for all seasons. I put them on the second I get home, and they're amazing for reading a book or devotional, but they're also stylish enough where if we have neighborhood kids coming over, I don't feel the need to change. I also have the bamboo sheet set that we sleep in, which are crafted 100% from premium viscose from bamboo, making it the softest, most breathable bedding you'll own. Cozy Earth's goal is to transform your space into an elevated haven where serenity and renewal intertwine effortlessly, which not only fits into my actual name, but it's also what I hope and pray my home can be, not only for myself, but my husband, kids, and whoever we bring into our sacred space with us. You can visit cozyearth.com/staytrue and use my exclusive 40% off code, Haven. If you get a post-purchase survey, say that you heard about Cozy Earth from the Haven podcast. Create your own sanctuary with Cozy Earth. Okay, back to the episode. What would you say is one of our perpetual issues that we continually come to you for?
Oh, wow. So many.
Oh, God.
There are 69 of them.
We all do have quite a few. The one that we talk about a lot is your need for structure and your need for spontaneity, and you don't have a high need to do life with a lot of structure. You have a lot higher need to do life with a lot of structure. And it's a really interesting way that I just verbalized that, and that's one of the hardest things I think with couples when they're identifying their perpetual issues. I could have said, oh, he just doesn't care about stuff. Oh, she's just rigid as all get out. I could have said it like that. And I think that's the real goal in identifying these perpetual issues, is to keep it on the positive, which is another big point about healthy relationships and relationships that last is called what Gottman calls positive sentiment. And we need to be in a sense of positive sentiment override, so that our positive sentiment always overrides a negative sentiment. It's interesting as we're talking about all of this that we all have some negative sentiment working down here that has to be dealt with. If we don't deal with it effectively, it begins to rise. And so over time, as the negative sentiment rises, then the positive sentiment decreases. So that's just one of the things that really will predict that if a couple will make it or not, if they can reverse that process and have the negative sentiment always down here, because we're always going to have some, but always be in positive sentiment override, so that if you come in and just yelling, screaming at him, his first response was, wow, something must have happened to Haven today to get her so upset. Not to go in the defensive mode. What did I do? I'm just sitting here. You just walked in and lambasted me. What's that about? You'll have more compassion and a sense of just positivity, knowing that she's your partner. She's not after you. And I think that's so important in predicting that couples will make it, and they'll make it well, is positive sentiment override.
They're like perpetual features.
That's
not
right.
issues.
Not issues, perpetual features. That's a good spin on it.
Yeah. It's interesting as we talk about that. I just named one that just came to mind. What would you say you've identified over the years as some of your perpetual issues that you'll perpetually work on and perpetually get better at?
What do you think?
Oh, you're just lobbing it back over to me?
Ladies first.
Okay.
Side note, we've been trying to teach Echo how to be a gentleman, and he's taking it very seriously until he doesn't want to at all.
Oh, that's a good side trail. It was because the reason this came up of teaching our son to be a gentleman is because whenever I park somewhere, both kids start yelling, can you please get me out first? So then the first tactic I tried was, who wants to let their sibling out first? And they didn't understand the question. They were like, me. And when they realized that I then would go with the other person, then that was whining. So I was like, what's another way I can do this? And so I said, okay, this week, Echo, we're doing gentleman training with you, which means we're always going to let Isley out first, and we're always going to walk her to school, her room first, and you're going to open her doors. And at first he was really upset about it. But then the next couple days, he was just telling all of his teachers, all of his friends, like, I'm a gentleman. And he would open the door and he'd go, Isley out first because I'm a gentleman. And so you're right. That is a gentleman quality to let me go first on this one.
There you go.
That's funny.
I'd say another one of our perpetual issues is that I'm like, how do I word this in a way? Like you said, positive.
And that's the hard part, I think.
It is. I have a higher need for social connection than you do.
Oh,
and
sure.
that I will thrive and feel more energized being around people, and I can accidentally tag you along to things that I feel would be refueling and you would see as draining. And then I may not even communicate it in the best way, so then you're caught off guard when we're doing something. And
Ooh, surprises.
Surprises actually kind of mess with you. I may need structure, but Aaron, especially if it's going to be an emotional output, needs a heads up so you can mentally prepare. So I'd say our perpetual issues is I have a higher need for that. And sometimes I can go do things solo, but a lot of the times I do like your involvement. And so it's kind of tapering and compromising.
Compromising. And I think that is one of Ann's and my perpetual issues. I'm just more social, more gregarious. I think the struggle in that is not to throw the other person under the bus. Oh, you just don't have any friends or don't need any friends. Oh, you just want to go out and party all the time. I think instead to be able to say, yeah, I just have higher social needs, and your social needs are not quite as high. You love silence and solitude, and that's just a better way to put that. So what have you identified as one of your ongoing perpetual issues there?
Yeah, Mr. Gentleman.
Okay.
I'm doing it right now. Just silence and solitude. I have a high need for that. And I think recognizing it too is that's an important part. Like what you said about there's sometimes a surprise event, or maybe I just wasn't aware of the event you needed me to be at. I would be like, uh-oh. But if I can see it coming, that helps me be able to recharge and manage it. That's
And
maybe
know
one
it's
way.
important to her for you to be a little bit more
I see
involved.
the value.
Right, see the value for that. And again, the hardest thing is not to throw each other under the bus on that. I know one of Ann's and my perpetual issues that we talk about pretty consistently because it's so prominent in our relationship is the butting up of the differences between her thoroughness and my efficiency. I like to be efficient in the way I use my time, money, whatever, and that can cause me sometimes to just get very rigid in the way I do things and just sometimes rush through things. Hers is just to do things very thoroughly and very methodically. So I could easily say, why don't you just hurry up? And she could easily say, you just do things halfway. That's the negative statement about those same identical qualities. So you can see how that my efficiency sometimes butts up against her thoroughness, but we've really learned to appreciate both of those qualities in each other so that it just really works well. We've had to learn to compromise. I've had to learn to slow down and learn patience. She's had to learn tolerance with me on those kind of issues. But to our point here, we all have them. We all have quite a number of them, and our goal is just to identify them and see that it's not a good or bad thing. It's just who we are as separate people having different personality traits, and we just have to get along and learn how to recognize them and not throw each other under the bus and name them as negative, but to see that that's just who we're married to.
Yeah, and I think one of our values that rub up against each other frequently is I have a high value for independence, and I want to try things my own way, and I don't want to conform. And I'd say you have a high value for you view things as there's a right way to do things or a wrong way to do things sometimes. And those hit up
because
against...
there are right ways to do things and wrong ways to do things.
And you helped me, as what I realized is we'll get into this weird pattern where I'm almost like a rebellious teenager of like, don't tell me what to do. I can do it my own way. I don't want to listen. And then he would get in almost this parent dynamic of this is right, this is wrong, this is a punishment. And we were in that cycle. So can you talk us through even how you helped us try and...
Oh, well, yeah. That transactional analysis idea of we can all function out of our parent. We all do, literally with our own children. But if you're a leader in the business or whatever you're doing, that is a parent role. I can be anything a parent can be. I can be a teaching parent. I could be a loving parent, a comforting parent, a provider parent. But in my relationships, especially with that, I don't want to be the parent. I want us to function both out of our adult to adult, and we all have that ability, and we all have those relationships, our peer relationships, co-worker relationships, where we are adult to adult, and that's where I think marriages function best if we get into both people into our adult role. So if I can function out of my parent, I can function out of my adult. I can also function out of you just said it, out of my child. I can be anything a child can be. I can be a compliant child, do what he says all the time. He'd be happy. But you would become the resentful child over time, or the angry or the rebellious child. So we can be a secretive child, whatever. So the best relationships, I think, marital-wise, although sometimes we play the protector parent or the provider parent, even to the other one, giving, servant parent, whatever, to help the helpful parent. But I think better off are those couples who find that adult to adult role, who both take responsibility for their own needs, but also on some level are accountable to the other and take responsibility for being committed to meeting the other person's needs. So one of the ways we get out of that is obviously you don't want to be the authoritarian parent, and you don't want, which would put her in the rebellious child role. So coming up and getting in that adult to adult role just works a lot better. So that's kind of how I explain that, and then get couples to talk about maybe how they don't want to be the parent and how they don't want to be the child. So come up with some ways that they can shift that just to be partners, be on the same team, equal partners in their relationship.
What if someone is listening and they're like, I am definitely consistently in the child dynamic, and maybe even there's that term for it, daddy issues. Maybe you married someone because that paternal, fathery figure of a spouse felt really safe, but now you're like, oh, I'm feeling trapped. What would they do about it?
Well, I think that's where some couples work could come in handy for them, where they can communicate that it'd be really important to not be directed, or even the simple thing is, if you want me to do something, will you just please ask instead of tell me what to do? And then that gets that person out of the rebellious stage. And that may be a good referral for individual therapy at certain points to work on their own daddy issues, as you say.
Yeah, I remember one of the examples was Aaron had a really specific way to load the dishwasher. And I'm not saying it wasn't right. It probably was the best way.
I read the manual. It was according to
According
the
to the
dishwasher, how you're supposed to.
And I just was like, you should be grateful I'm even doing the dishes. And you were saying, what if you just took that in and said, huh, that's so interesting. Like, thanks for sharing. And then he was like, and you can choose to do anything with it. Like, you don't even have to follow it. And I was like, that even feels like I'm conceding of acknowledging, oh, that's an interesting thing. But you were saying that then acknowledges his need to be heard and say what he feels is the right way. But then I don't have to go into the teen of, don't tell me how to live my life and all of this reflection back.
Right. I think that's really a good example where you listen, you hear that he would do it, and he would have a preference of how to do it. But if you ask him, probably he's not demanding or wanting to be that controlling, and you doing it the way he wants to. At least I would not hope you would. I would hope you would say, well, yeah, okay, I guess I need to be flexible and just realize that we all have our own idiosyncratic ways of loading the dishwasher or folding towels or doing a variety of other things in our lives.
Do you ever find couples that come in where you would recommend they get divorced?
I would just tell them that they have all the qualities of a divorce. I would really encourage them to see what kind of devastation they are creating in each other's lives, the devastation they may be creating in their own children's life. Now, the hardest thing, you're really talking about some very sensitive topics of domestic abuse or just a lot of verbal violence. And those relationships, ultimately, I won't need to say that. They, through the process, will figure that out themselves. Because I really have a high value of marriage, but at the same time, if people's lives are in danger, or there's perpetual drug abuse or perpetual infidelity, say, we'll just talk about the statistics of, okay, if you have one case of infidelity, it's kind of interesting that we know what causes marriages to fall apart, and actually one case of infidelity is not it, because 80% of those couples actually stay together. Now, if there's perpetual infidelity, it's just ongoing, then it just becomes very obvious that's an unsustainable type of relationship, and usually the person will say, okay, I'm tired of this. And I deal a lot with substance abuse folks, alcoholics, addicts, and basically in the 12-step program, when they're in recovery, they all say, well, I had to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And in a marriage, one or both have to get sick and tired of being sick and tired before either they make a change and say, I'm done, or they make a change and say, okay, we're going to work on this. I'm getting sick and tired of me doing the same thing. One of my favorite AA little slogans is, it's on a coin. One side of the coin says, nothing changes. And the other side of the coin says, if nothing changes. So we can start on either side of the coin. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And nothing changes if nothing changes. And usually couples figure that out fairly quickly if it's sustainable or not. They make that decision on their own. They drop out of therapy. they drop out of counseling, and they end up in the divorce process. I see quite a few couples actually who are in the divorce process. They are very difficult to work with because I always say, you're coming here for me to help you, and yet you're involved in the legal system, which polarizes you. So they're a lot of times already in that process, some of which stop the process and actually start getting better, some of which stay in that process and go through a divorce. Actually, talking about divorced couples, I see a couple of couples now who are divorced, and they're coming in to try to see if they can create a relationship, sometimes just a civil relationship and co-parenting, and sometimes to even consider getting back as a married couple. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Yeah, I'd imagine there is that one point where it's just really corrosive. For the way that I view marriage counseling is, I see you kind of like our dentist, where I'm like, we're going to do the necessary tools to brush our teeth and floss every day, but we want to come to you of like, hey, before this becomes like this cavity becomes such a big root canal, and then there's a lot of dental work you have to do, can you help us address maybe your blind spots? Or you're a professional and you can kind of look out and see maybe things that we aren't even aware of just from a third-party perspective. So I guess one of my questions to you is, throughout the course of our relationship, what have you seen that if we had not addressed head-on would have been corrosive?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. Might have to think about it, but just what I would say were the issues you brought in, with your parents' divorce right at that time you were engaged, with your mother's death, and all the trauma that ensued with all of that. If that wouldn't have been addressed, you guys would not be sitting here with this Pillow Talk presentation probably. You may be struggling so much you would not have come to the point of being able to help so many other couples.
That's actually a really good segue. You mentioned Pillow Talk, because that's why you're in town. It's why we flew you here to LA. It's why we're actually in a different setup. If you're watching this on video, you'll realize this is not our typical episode look. And it's because we filmed a relational e-course called Pillow Talk with Aaron, myself, and Dr. Cude, because I took a poll online with the podcast, and most of you come to me and listen on here for marriage and for relationships. And I have a hunch about that. I think it's because so many people in our generation, we grew up in either broken, divorced homes, or we saw our parents have marriages that I don't think we'd want for ourselves. It's not the same kind of dynamics of what we would sign up for, but we don't really know how to have a healthy marriage, or what does it even look like in the practical, nitty-gritty, day-to-day. So Aaron and I wanted to create a course for couples called Pillow Talk, because that's what we call it. It's the end of the day intimacy. Pillow Talk, it's not a new phrase. It's been around for a long time, but what it represents is a couple in the sacred aspect of their bed. Only they share the bed. That's where intimacy comes, both emotionally, physically, spiritually. And we wanted to add some conversation prompts to help other couples navigate life together, to get to know themselves and their partner. But we felt that was too daunting to just do for both of us in our experience share. We needed to bring in an actual expert. So thank you, Dr. Cude, for being a part of it, because so much of what I would attribute our health to is just the tools and practices and you listening to us and encouraging us to talk to one another. And so why don't you share a little bit about the first course we're releasing, How to Fight Better?
Oh, yeah. Conflict. Wow. We get a lot of that. We've had a lot of good discussions about the problems that we fight over. We talk about communication. We talk about a lot of the process that happens between a couple that turns them away from each other. And we talk about doing repairing and getting reconnected after a conflict. And what we talked about earlier in this podcast was that difference between perpetual and solvable problems, and the very fact that that's really an important distinction to make, helping couples to identify. And one of the things I like about the Pillow Talk were the pauses, where we would encourage the couples who are listening to the course to stop, and we have a lot of practical tools to encourage them to implement as they are working through the different topics that we cover about fighting fairly. We talk about boundaries. We talk about all those issues in our relationship that can cause conflict, and then how to mitigate that so that we can reconnect hopefully sooner and just have more of a satisfying relationship with each other.
I love one of the things you said in the course about the goal is not to win a fight, but it's to reconnect. And there are so many practical things that we've learned from you over the years that we've poured into this course, and I think would be so valuable for people as they go through all kinds of levels of conflict. Maybe it's really explosive, or it's just the subtle, tiny, little nagging, digging conflict that can come up in a relationship. It's so valuable to find out ways to deal with it, but also fight better.
And I enjoyed what we talked about, what our body does in the process of conflict when we get flooded, when we're overcome with emotion and just are very overwhelmed. And we talk about tools to not only do self-soothing or take care of ourselves to pull ourselves and out of the de-escalated into a de-escalated situation, but sometimes what we can do for each other or partner soothing, so that we can help each other de-escalate, so that we can come back to a more rational conversation and ultimately get to the point of just understanding what we need from each other in that reconciliation or reconnection process. Yeah, it's not about as much about solution as it is about resolution, not of the conflict, but really resolving or really reconnecting, not resolving, but reconnecting in our relationship with each other.
And you've shared about the difference, or I guess I would say the similarity between divorcing couples and married couples with the frequency of fights and just how often.
Yeah, we think certain things about marriage that simply are not true, and we don't believe certain things that are true. For instance, that fact that divorced couples fight about the same things that married couples do, and divorced couples fight about the same amount of time as married couples who stay together. We would think that divorced couples fight a lot more.
Totally.
They don't. They just fight a lot differently. They fight with a lot of criticism and disrespect and defensiveness, while couples who stay together, you look at them fighting, it looks like they're fighting for something, through something, and not against each other, which is what divorced couples look like.
I have a nosy question.
Yeah.
So you're a marriage counselor. This is what you do day in and day out as a profession. You've also been married for 40 years. Mm-hmm. If you go out like on a double date, or if you're around other couples and you're seeing a couple have really unhealthy conflict, is it hard to not diagnose what you would do in that issue? Or like, how do you observe it that way?
Oh, I see it all the time, and I just say, hey, give them my card. No, I really don't. But no, it's just in what I do, I see that, and I might make I make a comment to Ann as we're walking out. Gosh, not maybe the couple. I'd probably talk to the couple we were with, but other couples that I might observe, saying, well, what are the chances they have of making it? I might, but I try not to. I try to really take off that hat and just kind of be a normal person, so to speak, when I'm out and about. But yeah, it's hard. You see this kind of stuff. Metacommunication, the person in front of me in the grocery store is having an argument with the cashier, and I just go into, okay, they're really not talking about the price of the oranges here. They're really talking about, a power struggle or something that they're dealing with in their own life that's just not working. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to take off that hat at times, but that's why I work out a lot, on my way home, so I'm just de-stressed from the day.
Yeah, you taught us a lot about that, especially if there's a lot going on in the day, to do some type of buffer so you're not carrying it home in some way. Well, thank you for everything that you've taught us, not only in our counseling sessions or over the years, but even what you're going to be teaching now new listeners with Pillow Talk. So I'm just really glad that you opened up your expertise and shared your journey with us.
Well, it's been my privilege, and it's always good to see you guys again, and just think back of all those sessions a decade ago. That was obviously you're still hanging on to some of those, so that's really good to see that.
Yeah, I hope it's a good sign that our marriage counselor would be open to doing a course with us. I feel like if we were highly dysfunctional, you would say, maybe not.
No, my star pupils. So you
thanks.
graduated with high honors, that's for sure.
We'll take it.
Years
Yeah, we now
ago.
just come ad hoc. I wouldn't say it's a threat, but if we can't get over something over weeks, I'm like, I'm just gonna book a Dr. Cude about this. Like that's like the phrase is like we
But
have
I'm like,
to.
he gave us the tools. We should just use the tools now.
But you're still a topic of conversation in our marriage, so thank you for that. And
That's great.
for those of you listening, havenpod.com, sign up for Pillow Talk. We're really excited about this. We spent a lot of time pouring into not only our own marital experiences, but the tools that Dr. Cude taught us, and I'm excited to share it with the world. So it'll be accessed soon. Other than that, follow, like, subscribe. You know all the normal stuff when it comes to the podcast, but we'll see you next time.